Hey guys, tonight we're boarding a pirate ship. Not to hunt for gold, not to fire cannons, but to peek into the ledgers and tax returns of history's most misunderstood accountants, 18th century pirates. The sails are furled, the sea is calm, and somewhere in the captain's quarters, someone's balancing a budget. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where and when you're listening from. I love seeing all the time zones drifting off together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on the deck of the Fortune's Folly, a ship with more ink stains than bloodstains. It's just past midnight, and instead of drunken singing or clanking sabers, you hear the gentle rustle of parchment. The moonlight casts long shadows over a group of grizzled men huddled around a wooden crate, arguing not over treasure, but over deductions. One pirate scratches his head with a quill, frowning at a chart. What if the peg leg replacement counts as a capital expense? He mutters. Another scoffs, puffing on a pipe carved from a whale's tooth. Only if it's the deluxe model, you fool. You shuffle closer, careful not to creak the planks beneath your feet. It's not the kind of conversation you expected on a pirate ship. There's no talk of doubloons or buried chests, just a heated debate about rum rations, injury reimbursements, and how to account for cannon maintenance. A salty breeze flutters the corner of a parchment labeled Shared Profit Disbursement. Model Crew Edition. Underneath, the ink is faded but legible. It outlines something shockingly modern. Fixed shares for different ranks, risk premiums for dangerous tasks, even bonuses for surviving particularly stormy voyages. It's like a startup's equity plan. If the startup pillaged Spanish galleons for a living, you pass by a half-barrel that's been repurposed into a desk, complete with an abacus carved from shell casings. Behind it, the quartermaster squints at a candle stub and grumbles. We'll be needin' to set aside 10%. For the powder fund? Aye, and don't forget the parrot feed. Turns out, even among sea rogues, someone has to manage the books, and that someone takes their job very, very seriously. You overhear snippets of conversation. Do we classify cannonball storage as inventory or fixed asset? Technically, if Jenkins loses a hand again, he can't claim another compensation, can he? I still say we should switch to a rum-based economy, easier to track. One pirate, clearly new, leans in and whispers to another, "Didn't think pirates filed taxes." The older man chuckles and pats the youth's shoulder. "Aye, lad, we don't file 'em with the king, we file 'em in case the king shows." Up. You shift your gaze to the captain's cabin. Door cracked just enough for a glow to slip through. Inside, Captain Merriweather is hunched over a logbook the size of a cannon hatch. His hat sits lopsided, a quill in his mouth, and his fingers tapping a beat on the table as he murmurs numbers. On the wall, a chart titled Q2 Booty Allocation vs. Actual Plunder. There are pie charts. Pie charts. One slice is ominously labeled Unexpected Repairs, Mermaid Incident. From above, the stars shimmer like they're eavesdropping. The ship gently rocks, the air smells of salt, ink, and old leather, and your eyelids grow heavy. In the distance, someone hums a lullaby, off-key but oddly soothing. A rat scurries past with what might be a receipt in its mouth. You're beginning to realize something no textbook ever mentioned. Being a pirate wasn't just about rum and rebellion. It was also about ledgers, legal loopholes, and avoiding, well, other pirates who might audit you with a sword. As the ship sways gently and the accounts are reconciled, you find yourself strangely at ease, because tonight, even the sea seems to respect the quiet, orderly calm of a well-balanced spreadsheet. You tiptoe into the captain's quarters, careful not to disturb the delicate stack of ledgers teetering beside a bottle of half-finished ink. The candlelight flickers across a face not of a sunburned, gold-toothed brute, but a well-groomed man, with wire-rimmed spectacles and a powdered wig that's seen better winds. This is Mr. Percival Thatch. Not captain, not quartermaster, just, politely, the accountant. "Ah," he says, without turning. "You must be the new quarter share. Have a seat if you can find a flat surface." You perch on a barrel labeled Exploding Citrus, Do Not Stack, and try to avoid knocking over a scroll titled Amendments to the Booty Ledger, Revision 3B. Thatch gently blows dust off a page before turning to face you, his eyes glinting with more calculation than rebellion. I wasn't always in this line of work, you know, he says, adjusting his cravat. I was once with the East India Company. But piracy, well, it offers more flexible accounting standards. You nod slowly as he unfurls a parchment chart with astonishing neatness. Each column is labeled acquired goods, estimated value, share by rank, expenses, and one ominously blank column titled Royal Entanglements Avoided. Thatch explains that pirates, unlike royal navies, ran flat democracies when it came to treasure. Shares were calculated down to the last coin. A captain might only earn 2 shares, a carpenter 1.5. There was even a clause for emotional damages, usually invoked when someone lost a beard in battle. He leans forward, lowering his voice. You see, piracy was profitable, but only if you didn't get labeled a traitor. That's where I come in. You raise an eyebrow. He smirks. I make sure every transaction looks like salvage. If the Admiralty inspects our records, they see a salvage crew helping themselves to floating cargo. We never robbed a ship. We merely rescued unattended goods. You blink. That's not entirely inaccurate. Sort of. And taxes? You whisper. Ah. He chuckles. We pay them. Just not in England. We pay the Dutch, or the Danes, or sometimes the Sultan of Oman if he's feeling generous. Better an international pirate than a domestic. One, you understand. He rummages through a drawer and pulls out a coin embossed with a crescent moon. This, he says, buys you legal amnesty in the Barbary States. Costs less than a lawyer. Your fingers brush the spine of a ledger titled Alternative Flag Registrations. Legality Matrix, 1723 edition. Thatch notices. A good pirate. Accountant, he says. Keeps 5 flags, 3 aliases, and 1 fallback nation that thinks he's a hero. Outside, the waves lap against the hull like a sleepy metronome. You hear muffled laughter. Someone's made a joke about deducting the parrot's food as a communication expense. Thatch hands you a small notebook. Start logging your spoils, he instructs. Ink goes under supplies, cannonballs under inventory, emotional damage. You'll know it when it happens. He returns to his work, scribbling quietly, the candle casting shadows that dance like ghosts across his pages. You lean back, eyes heavy, ears full of whispered numbers and sea air. It's then he adds, almost dreamily. The Spanish crown once tried to audit a Caribbean crew. They mailed a summons. No one answered. He taps the paper softly. Some say that's when the sea learned to keep secrets. Outside, the wind shifts, the sails rustle. And somewhere above, a gull calls out like an accountant crying over unbalanced ledgers. You smile in the candlelight. It's going to be a very organized voyage. The next morning creeps in slowly, with seagulls croaking like broken bagpipes and sunlight slithering through a cracked porthole. You stretch on your hammock, stiff from a night of dreaming about decimal points and parrots with tax IDs. You shuffle, back to the deck just in time to catch a heated debate over a split share of smoked herring. Not treasure, just herring. The argument is passionate, borderline philosophical. You can't just round down a half share, one pirate insists, slamming a spoon on the barrel. What if I want the tail end, eh? That's still value. Another pirate pulls out a dog-eared parchment and squints. Look here, he growls. According to Article 6 of the ship's Charter of Equity and Grumbling, anything under 1 full share must be negotiated by duel or dice. You blink. Apparently, this isn't unusual. By mid-morning, you find yourself seated next to old Gaff, the boatswain. He smells like mildew and peppermint, and his beard looks like it once belonged to a mop. He taps a thick book resting on his lap. This here's the code, he rasps. Not the pirate code, mind you. The fair shares code. Thag opens it reverently. Inside are hand-drawn tables, pages filled with careful ink lines and symbols. Some nautical, some suspiciously algebraic. You lean in. One table reads, Sas Sao Chep Chin Sua Captain, 2 shares first mate, 1.5 shares sailor, 1 share cook. 0.8 shares, unless meals cause mutiny. Doctor, 1.2 shares, plus hazard pay if treating peg legs. Musician, 0.3 shares, unless morale is high. You ask what happens if the ship brings in extra loot. Old Gaff shrugs. Then we all get more shares. But you gotta divide by the total, after deducting for ship repairs, bribes, bandages, and of course, the captain's haircut fund. Wait, you interrupt. The captain gets a haircut fund? Aye, Gaff chuckles. He calls it brand management. Nearby, a group of pirates is gathered around what looks like an overgrown abacus, arguing about coconut profits from a recent raid on a merchant vessel. They're really into amortization schedules. You'd expected backstabbing and double crosses, not quarterly financial reviews. One pirate pulls you aside. It used to be chaos, you know? First come, first grab. But then we had too many fights, too many broken noses over who gets the gold buttons. He points to the code again. So we wrote this. Everyone gets a share based on work, risk, and general not being a nuisance. We call it the spreadsheet of brotherhood. You flip through a page labeled Special Cases and Unruly Situations. There are clauses for lost limbs during unauthorized swordplay, bribery with inferior alcohol, emotional distress due to ghost ship sightings, and your favorite, if Parrot steals coin and refuses to return it, coin is considered gift to morale. Later, as you help swab the deck, 100th share reward, someone drops a ledger in your lap. You're in charge of calculating the morale bonus today, the cook says, tossing you a biscuit that's harder than cannon. Iron. You ask what factors into morale. He thinks. Rain, food, wind, and whether Jenkins is singing. You scribble your calculations. Rain, bad. Wind, good. Jenkins, catastrophic. It's not elegant, but it's enough to update the morale coefficient on the crew ledger. 004 shares for everyone except Jenkins, who is temporarily docked for crimes against harmony. The sun warms the deck. Someone hums a sea shanty in D minor, probably by accident. You close the ledger, satisfied, and as the ship creaks along, you realize pirates didn't just share loot. They shared systems, rules, tables, the dream of a floating economy where fairness came from formulas and justice was doled out, with decimal points. It's weirdly soothing. You drift toward the galley, heart calm, mind full of ledgers and limes. Somewhere behind you, someone mutters, "Next week, we discuss dividends." The next morning creeps in slowly, with seagulls croaking like broken bagpipes and sunlight slithering through a cracked porthole. You stretch on your hammock, stiff from a night of dreaming about decimal points and parrots with tax IDs. You shuffle, back to the deck just in time to catch a heated debate over a split share of smoked herring. Not treasure, just herring. The argument is passionate, borderline philosophical. You can't just round down a half share, one pirate insists, slamming a spoon on the barrel. What if I want the tail end, eh? That's still value. Another pirate pulls out a dog-eared parchment and squints. Look here, he growls. According to Article 6 of the ship's Charter of Equity and Grumbling, anything under one full share must be negotiated by duel or dice. You blink. Apparently, this isn't unusual. By mid-morning, you find yourself seated next to Old Gaff, the boatswain. He smells like mildew and peppermint, and his beard looks like it once belonged to a mop. He taps a thick book resting on his lap. This here's the code, he rasps. Not the pirate code, mind you. The fair shares code. Dag opens it reverently. Inside are hand-drawn tables, pages filled with careful ink lines and symbols. Some nautical, some suspiciously algebraic. You lean in. One table reads, Sas Sao Chep Chin Sua Captain, 2 shares first mate, 1.5 shares sailor, 1 share cook. 0.8 shares, unless meals cause mutiny. Doctor, 1.2 shares, plus hazard pay if treating peg legs. Musician, 0.3 shares, unless morale is high. You ask what happens if the ship brings in extra loot. Old Gaff shrugs. Then we all get more shares. But you gotta divide by the total, after deducting for ship repairs, bribes, bandages, and of course, the captain's haircut fund. Wait, you interrupt. The captain gets a haircut fund? Aye, Gaff chuckles. He calls it brand management. Nearby, a group of pirates is gathered around what looks like an overgrown abacus, arguing about coconut profits from a recent raid on a merchant vessel. They're really into amortization schedules. You'd expected backstabbing and double crosses, not quarterly financial reviews. One pirate pulls you aside. It used to be chaos, you know? First come, first grab. But then we had too many fights, too many broken noses over who gets the gold buttons. He points to the code again. So we wrote this. Everyone gets a share based on work, risk, and general not being a nuisance. We call it the spreadsheet of brotherhood. You flip through a page labeled Special Cases and Unruly Situations. There are clauses for lost limbs during unauthorized swordplay, bribery with inferior alcohol, emotional distress due to ghost ship sightings, and your favorite, if Parrot steals coin and refuses to return it, coin is considered gift to morale. Later, as you help swab the deck, 100th share reward, someone drops a ledger in your lap. You're in charge of calculating the morale bonus today, the cook says, tossing you a biscuit that's harder than cannon. Iron. You ask what factors into morale. He thinks. Rain, food, wind, and whether Jenkins is singing. You scribble your calculations. Rain, bad. Wind, good. Jenkins, catastrophic. It's not elegant, but it's enough to update the morale coefficient on the crew ledger. 004 shares for everyone except Jenkins, who is temporarily docked for crimes against harmony. The sun warms the deck. Someone hums a sea shanty in D minor, probably by accident. You close the ledger, satisfied, and as the ship creaks along, you realize pirates didn't just share loot. They shared systems, rules, tables, the dream of a floating economy where fairness came from formulas and justice was doled out, with decimal points. It's weirdly soothing. You drift toward the galley, heart calm, mind full of ledgers and limes. Somewhere behind you, someone mutters, "Next week, we discuss dividends." The next day begins with rain. Not the dramatic storm kind, but the quiet, sideways drizzle that makes everything feel like it's underwater. The crew moves slower, sipping lukewarm tea and squinting at paperwork that's beginning to curl. At the edges, you're below deck, huddled near the warmth of the cook fire, when you overhear something strange. So I says to him, "If we're paying taxes to the crown now, do you reckon we can deduct bribes to the customs officer?" Wait. What U-turn? It's Barlow, the navigator with a permanently damp hat, and the voice of a man who's swallowed too many compasses. He's serious. You lean in. He shrugs. Word is, some crews struck deals. They send a chest of coin to the crown once a season. And in return, no pursuit. You blink. That sounds illegal. Wait, double illegal? Barlow grins. That's the beauty. It ain't piracy if the king says it ain't. Later, up on deck, you catch Thatch scribbling on a scroll titled Crown Acceptable Contributions, Non-Treasonous Donations. He notices your expression. Oh yes, he says dryly, tax evasion is a crime. But tax negotiation? That's just diplomacy. He explains. During certain years, the British Empire found it convenient to look the other way. Some pirate crews, especially those raiding Spanish or French ships, were seen as helpful annoyances. Not enemies, just freelancers with a violent expense report. In fact, Thatch adds, there are rumors that the Admiralty kept a ledger titled Unofficial Allies on the High Seas. You ask if the pirates really paid taxes. Technically, no, Thatch replies. They made contributions, voluntary, unsolicited, delivered by cannon if necessary. You imagine a tax office clerk dodging cannonballs with a quill in hand. Received one unsolicited chest and a note written in squid ink. Down in the galley, you find a tiny tin box marked Royal Deductions Fund. Inside are coins from 7 different kingdoms, a stamp of the Union Jack, and a sticky note that reads, if intercepted, this is definitely charity. Old Gaff tells you about the Letter of Marque loophole, a legal document that technically made privateers legal pirates, or piratey legal men. Get one signed, he says, and suddenly you're robbing enemy ships for the Queen, but lose it, and now you're just a soggy felon. Some captains made it an art. They carried multiple flags, paid the crown in gold and gossip, and sent coded ledgers via messenger gulls. The ledgers were often disguised as cookbooks with entries like Spanish trade convoy, sautéed with cannon fire, French frigate a la sneak attack, Dutch merchant, gently seared, no survivors, gluten-free. There's a special section in the Book of Adjustments titled Taxes Paid, maybe depending on interpretation. It includes lines like, Donation to His Majesty's Pirate Relief Fund. Gift to avoid prosecution. Definitely not a bribe. Barrel of rum left in port unattended. You ask Thatch what the risk was. He shrugs. Depends on the mood of Parliament. One day you're an asset to the crown. The next you're being hunted by the Royal Navy for creative bookkeeping. And yet, many still tried. Because the trade-off was simple. Pay some. Coin. Avoid the noose. Sleep slightly better. As evening falls and the fog rolls in, the ship seems quieter. Even the gulls are contemplative. You sit alone near the helm, thinking about all those whispered deals. Pirates playing politics, bribing their way into legitimacy, and occasionally writing checks to kings who'd rather not admit it. The Union. Jack flaps somewhere far off in the mist, distant but not disinterested, and below it all, the books are balanced. More or less. The night is sticky and warm. No wind, no moon, just the heavy breath of a sleeping sea. The ship rocks lazily, like a cradle. You're nodding off with your head against a bundle of sailcloth, when suddenly, boom, a single cannon blast shatters the stillness. Not from your ship, but toward it. You spring up, groggy but alert. Crew members scramble. Someone yells, "Hostile starboard, they've got no flag." It's chaos, but not the usual kind. No swords drawn, no screams of vengeance. What you hear is stranger. Protect the ledger. You blink. Surely they meant captain or rum reserves? The quartermaster's ledger. Someone clarifies, hoisting a crate of scrolls like it's the crown jewels. The attacker draws closer, a sleek sloop with blood-red sails and gold-trimmed rails. The kind of ship that's more stylish than seaworthy. Thatch appears beside you, breathless, glasses fogged. They're ledger hunters. They raid not for gold, but for books. Your eyes widen, he explains rapidly. There's a network, underground, informal, deeply nerdy. They steal the accounting records of rival ships, not for treasure, but for data. You watch as grappling hooks clatter against the side of your ship. They want our shares formula, Thatch says grimly, especially the updated one with the fatigue modifier. Crew members rush to conceal scrolls, stuff ledgers into barrels, and hide abacuses in the most absurd places. Someone shoves one into a cannon. On deck, the intruders arrive, not grizzled. Pirates, but well-dressed figures wielding ledgers like swords and stamping boots with suspiciously polished heels. One shouts, "Where's your Section D? Rum allocations!" Jenkins, to his credit, tosses a decoy scroll overboard. "That's last quarter's," he cackles. Suckers, you dive for the real ledger, hidden beneath a false floorboard marked, "Definitely not a secret hatch." Thatch is behind you, scribbling furiously. If we survive, we'll need to create a depreciation entry for unexpected book heist. The attackers don't steal valuables. They photograph charts, transcribe tables, snap sketches of column formats. Someone yells from above, "They're copying our inventory codes." And then, it's over. They leave as quickly as they came, vanishing into the mist with nothing but parchment and smug satisfaction. In the aftermath, the crew gathers in the mess hall. Morale is bruised. They took our profit margin formulas, someone mumbles. And the crew wellness metrics, another adds. Even the pie chart templates. Captain Merriweather bangs a spoon on the table. "Gentlemen, ladies, parrots, we rebuild." Thatch nods solemnly. "We'll innovate, pivot, add a line for ledgers compromised during raids." Old Gaff whispers, "We'll make a new formula, with color coding." You, somehow, are tasked with rewriting this share redistribution matrix from memory. It's like rewriting War and Peace from vibes alone, but the crew rallies. Parchment is unrolled, quills are sharpened. Rum is poured, not in despair, but in focused resolve. And slowly, steadily, a new ledger is born, stronger, smarter, with lockable sections. As the candles burn low and the new formula begins to take shape, someone raises a mug. To the only treasure they can't bury, good bookkeeping. And you, exhausted but weirdly proud, raise yours too. Because tonight, the treasure wasn't gold. It was data. And pirates, it turns out, don't just steal. They copy meticulously. You're in the hold, reorganizing crates of dried limes, labeled anti-scurvy, semi-edible, when you hear voices. Low, sharp, calculating. You freeze behind a stack of barrels and listen. It's the captain, and he's whispering with Thatch. "Look," the captain mutters. "I'm not saying we lie. I'm saying we strategically reinterpret the inventory." Thatch sighs. "Captain, the crew already thinks we're hiding doubloons inside the biscuit tins. Do we really need to fudge the cannonball count?" You peek through a crack in the barrel stack. Captain Merriweather leans against a crate marked "Definitely Not Fraud" with the ease of a man who's invented 3 identities and paid taxes under none. He's holding a ledger with several lines. Smudged. "Conveniently. I'm not suggesting fraud," he insists. "Just depreciation." Thatch raises a brow. "We haven't used the front mast in 2 weeks because Jenkins tied a hammock to it. That doesn't count as non-performing asset." "Does if it swings," the captain replies. You suppress a laugh. Thatch protests, flipping through pages. "This entry just says, miscellaneous bird-related damages. That could mean anything." The captain shrugs. "Exactly." He leans in. "Besides, the fewer assets we list, the fewer we have to explain if the Navy comes snooping. It's not tax evasion, it's preemptive disappearance. That's when it hits you. The captain isn't a swashbuckler. He's a creative accountant with a sword." Later that day, he holds a crew-wide inventory reduction ceremony. You all stand in a solemn circle as he declares Item 134B, overdue maps of questionable accuracy, retired. And with great drama, he drops them overboard. Item 212C, severely haunted compass, divested. Plop. Item 008A, the spare anchor chain Jenkins tied into a pretzel, written off. Splash. Each entry is logged. Each splash earns a cheer. The sea becomes your new filing cabinet. That night, Thatch gathers the junior scribes. Lesson 1, he intones, never let the captain near the depreciation schedule without supervision. You watch as the crew invents euphemisms for loss. Tactically evaporated, relocated to Davy Jones' subledger, donated to Poseidon's pension plan. A page in the ledger now reads, assets misplaced through existential circumstance. Meanwhile, the captain starts marking entries with mysterious symbols, a starfish here, a jellyfish there. You ask what they mean. "They're my new auditing system," he says proudly. "If a Navy man reads this, he'll be too confused to prosecute." Thatch stares into the distance. We're one jellyfish away from needing legal counsel. You think about all the lost items now resting peacefully on the seafloor. Maybe someday a team of underwater historians will piece together your entire operation from soggy scrolls. Until then, your ship floats a little lighter, physically and metaphorically, and the captain, ledger in hand, smiles at the horizon. Good. Books, he says, are best when they're slightly fictional. You nod, filing that under. Creative risk management. And with that, the day ends, not with a duel, but with a deduction. The morning fog parts like a theater curtain to reveal a ship anchored off your starboard bow. Sleek, square, suspiciously. Beige, no skulls, no cannons, just a large, unnervingly clean sail stamped with the emblem of a quill crossing a scroll. You squint, then someone gasps. It's them, the floating IRS. The words hang in the salt air like a thundercloud made of paperwork. Thatch mutters a curse under his breath. Jenkins immediately pretends to faint. The captain grabs his coat and hisses, "Hide the rum. Burn the creative ledgers. Someone please iron my cravat." You ask, carefully, who exactly them is. Thatch grimaces. It's a tax enforcement ship, not Navy, not pirates, just auditors, seaborne, sanctimonious, clipboard-wielding demons in linen. You board the vessel under flag of voluntary cooperation, flanked by 2 tax compliance officers with clipboards and matching judging expressions. The ship's deck is polished to a terrifying shine. You can see your soul in the wood grain. "Welcome," says one officer, handing you a scroll titled Form 12C, Declaration of Loot-Based Income, Supplemental C Edition. You blink. It's 12 pages. The officer, named Murdoch, gestures to a tidy table set with ink pots, regulation, parchment, and a rather aggressive-looking quill chained to the desk. "Please list all assets, deductions, disputed treasure, livestock, and unclaimed hauntings," he drones. Include ghost ship encounters in Appendix D. Another officer is auditing your crew's cooking expenses. He's currently interrogating the ship's cook about the business justification for 17 barrels of pickled plums. You spot Jenkins trying to explain the Parrot morale stipend. It's not going well. Murdoch pulls out a magnifying glass. This line item says, emotional damage from Kraken encounter, 14 gold coins. You nod. Trauma is real. He raises a brow. Did the Kraken provide an invoice? You point at Jenkins, who's sketching something that looks vaguely like an octopus giving a thumbs up. Murdoch sighs and scribbles. Subject exhibits strong imaginative deduction logic. Further review required. Later, you're ushered into an office. A literal office. On the ship, complete with a carpet and a ficus. A ficus. At sea. The officer across from you, Ms. Penwhistle, speaks in hushed tones. We've audited 73 ships this quarter. Yours is the only one that listed mermaid-related espionage under business risk. You lean forward. It's a volatile market, she nods. We're watching it. They ask for proof of cannon maintenance, evidence of plunder receipts, even a diagram of the crew's bunk allocation to assess livable share equity. At one point, they ask about a deduction labeled 1 gold coin for Jenkins's therapy via aggressive tambourine. You shrug. It helped. You leave the ship 4 hours later, exhausted, humiliated, and carrying a complimentary scroll. Congratulations. You may be eligible for the 17% Independent Rater Income Flexibility Credit, pending further review. Back on your ship, the crew cheers your return like you've survived a war. The captain claps your shoulder. You did well. I once fainted into their ficus. Took me a week to recover. That night, as you stare at the sky and try to forget Form 12C, a thought creeps in. On land, the IRS has offices. Out here, they float. And no matter how far you sail, they will find you. The ship is anchored off the coast of a sleepy port town, the kind with crooked roofs, polite goats, and a town hall made entirely of driftwood and passive aggression. From the deck, you spot a small sign near the shore. Welcome to Port Bureaucratia, home of the most tolerated harbor master in the colonies. Thatch leans over the railing and sighs. Time to file the quarterly return. You raise an eyebrow. We're sailing into port? He shakes his head. No. We send it in. You glance around. With what? A pigeon? A bottle? He points. To the cannon. You follow him to the lower deck where Jenkins is stuffing scrolls, neatly rolled and sealed in wax, into hollowed cannonballs. This, he says with pride, is what we call the auditory e-filing method. You're horrified. You're intrigued. You're impressed. Each return contains detailed logs of raids, loot declarations, rum inventory breakdowns. One handwritten apology for accidentally blockading a fishing village, Thatch. Explains that Port Bureaucratia's system is outdated. They refuse carrier parrots. The mailbox is too small for treasure chests. So, pirate ingenuity found a louder way. He points to a rocky outcrop near the town square, its top scorched black from years of cannon-based correspondence. You load the cannon, you light the fuse. Thoom! The scroll soars through the sky like an angry flaming paper pigeon. A moment later, boom, direct hit. You see smoke, then a man waving a charred flag that says, received. Another crewmate loads a second shot labeled Q3 Addendum, misplaced Spanish sloop. Thoom. Another direct hit. This time it crashes through the chimney of the local assessor's office. You hear shouting. Perfect, Thatch says. You ask what happens if they miss. Oh, he smiles. We include a backup copy in the cannonball marked Apology in Advance. There's even a tradition. If 3 cannon filings hit the mark in a row, the harbor master sends back a fruit basket. By catapult. This quarter's basket included 4 pairs. A letter reading, tell Jenkins to stop doodling on Form 19Z. A bonus deduction for accuracy under duress. You find this barbaric, brilliant, and oddly efficient. Later, Captain Merriweather gathers the crew for a toast. To civic duty, he says, and explosives. Thatch nods, raising his mug. And to the townsfolk who still let us file returns after we accidentally sank their lighthouse, with a thank you note. That night, you stare out at the calm bay, smoke from the cannon drifting like mist. Somewhere in that quaint little town, a harried clerk is trying to decipher Jenkins' handwriting while fending off parrots, and you realize something strange. In a world of chaos, storms, and sword fights, there's something comforting about filing taxes on time, even if it's with gunpowder. The task arrives in the form of a scroll pinned to your hammock with a fishbone. To you. Subject: ship depreciation. Deadline: before mold reclaims Jenkins' socks. You find Thatch in the galley with 4 abacuses, 3 half-burned candles, and 1 mug labeled Auditor Fuel. Ah, he says, you're here to devalue the only thing keeping us afloat. You blink. He hands you a battered chart titled Asset Depreciation Schedule, HMS Poor Judgment. Right at the top, original value, 10,000 gold coins. Current value, emotional. You sit together on the deck with the chart between you and the entire ship groaning around you like it knows it's being audited. Thatch begins. Hull. Structurally intact, but emotionally unavailable. Minus 500 coins for each patch made from unrelated ships. Sails. Once majestic, now resemble oversized dishcloths. Reduce value for holes shaped like continents. Cannon array. 3 still fire, 2 prefer to sing. 1 is haunted, that one's a write-off. Then he points to the most controversial category. Ambient qualities. You raise an eyebrow. Yes, Thatch says. Smells count. He hands you a form. Sensory depreciation chart, smell-based valuation. You walk the deck, sniffing with the focus of a perfumer at war. Forecastle. Hint of tar, sweat, and something that might be pickled rat. Galley. A. Mixture of burnt beans and remorse. Captain's quarters, leather, citrus, and a faint whiff of lies. Below deck, Jenkins. You deduct accordingly. Later you move to the auditory depreciation index, where every squeaky floorboard earns a percentage point off value. Jenkins insists the creaks are musical. You disagree. You sit with the carpentry log. Mainmast, bent during storm, used afterward as crew limbo pole. Rudder, slightly cracked, replaced with steering wheel from stagecoach. Crow's nest, technically a large bucket now. Thatch sighs. The ship's still seaworthy, but if it were a horse, we'd have retired it to a farm up north where it could run free. The final entry? Ship's morale. You pause. Can morale depreciate? Thatch nods. Oh yes, but good news. We've started issuing emotional support cannonballs. By the end of the night, you've filled 2 scrolls with depreciation entries, a pie chart titled Rot Spread by Deck Section, and a poetic note that reads, Ship value today, 3,248 gold coins, or 11 barrels of rum, or 1 solid week of not sinking. The captain signs it with a flourish, and a paw print from the ship's cat, just to be thorough. As the stars come out, you sit on the quarterdeck, sipping stale tea and watching the lanterns flicker. The ship may creak, groan, and reek, but it's your creaky, groaning, reeking home, and tonight at least it's fully depreciated. You're stirring your morning porridge, which tastes suspiciously like last night's porridge, when Jenkins stumbles in, clutching his arm. I need a bandage, he groans, and a receipt. You look up. A receipt for bleeding? He nods solemnly. Captain says it might be tax deductible. You follow him to the quarterdeck where the crew is gathered around Thatch and a very large scroll titled Unusual Business Expenses, Pending Approval. At the top of the list, minor sword fights, training or territorial. Property damage under 3 barrels. Therapy via interpretive yelling. Captain, Merriweather stands at the helm, looking far too pleased with himself. This morning's altercation, he announces, shall be filed under dispute resolution. Services, on-site improvised. You blink. The sword fight over breakfast biscuits? A team-building exercise, he insists. With overhead. Thatch sighs. He's been reading the Tax Strategies for Gentlemen Corsairs manual. Again. You sit beside the incident ledger, tasked with classifying today's chaos. Nature of incident: mild to moderate violence. Cause: conflicting biscuit ownership. Outcome: 2 bruises, 1 bent cutlass, 1 very confused parrot. Resolution: group therapy, yelling in sync, followed by shared biscuits. You write, filed under, culinary conflicts and weapons maintenance. Later in the ship's makeshift courtroom, i.e. the cargo hold, Jenkins testifies, "I slipped, my sword slipped. Her biscuit was on my sword's path. It was destiny." The captain bangs a ladle on a crate. Approved for deduction. Thatch adds it to the gray area justifications ledger, right next to sea shanty copyright disputes. Accidental plank walking during full moon. Emotional damages from shared socks. You ask, how does the tax office accept this? Thatch grins. They don't. But if you submit with enough confidence and just the right amount of glitter, they hesitate to argue. The rest of the day is a blur of reenactments to verify injury angles, dramatic readings of tax codes, and Jenkins modeling his new sash that says combat-related expense. That evening, the captain updates the ship's budget allocation scroll. Weapons, plus 3%, includes expressive flourishes. Medical, plus 1%, includes bandages and emotional ointment. Biscuits, plus 7%, risk mitigation. You finish your report with a final note. Sword fights deemed unavoidable, emotionally cathartic, and slightly deductible, recommending quarterly duels for morale. As the sun sets, you sit beside the railing, ledger in your lap, wondering if any accountant on land would believe a word of this. But here, on this ship, under these stars, it makes perfect sense, because sometimes a good fight clears the air, and sometimes it lowers your tax burden. The crew assembles on deck just after sunset, the air thick with salt, sweat, and an anticipatory buzz. It's payroll night, but not in any way a land dweller would recognize. At the center of it all, a stack of barrels, a wobbly table, and Jenkins. Wearing a sash that reads, Chief Liquidity Officer, Thatch calls you over, ready to witness the only payroll system that requires a corkscrew? You nod, cautiously. He hands you a sheet titled Weekly Wage Disbursement, Rum-based format. 1 barrel, chalked full week's work with minimal complaining. 1 2-barrel, chalked late to watch shift or excessive whistling. 1 4-barrel. The accidental cannon discharge or interpretive dancing in the galley. Double rations, defeating sea monster, solving accounting error, or making captain laugh. The system is old, chaotic, and somehow binding. The first crew member steps forward. Jenkins hands him a ladle and a ledger. State your hours, Jenkins says like a bored bartender. 6 shifts, 1 mop-related injury, no yelling at the parrots. Jenkins nods, fills his flask. Another crewman tries to bluff. I worked overtime on Thursday. Thursday was a hallucination, Thatch interjects. You were asleep inside a barrel. A cheer goes up when the captain strolls out holding a parchment titled Morale Bonuses, Q2 Adjustments. He clears his throat. Due to exceptional singing during the storm and minimal vomiting on the quarterdeck, the entire crew is hereby awarded an additional pint. You scribble furiously in the rum wage log, trying to keep up. Some of the bonuses include extra measure for cleaning the ghost out of the compass, rum credit for naming the ship's cat Fiscal Clawdown, deferred rum reimbursement for interpretive tax advice. Someone tries to negotiate. Can I split mine? Half for me, half to invest in the hammock repair fund? Jenkins blinks. We don't offer retirement accounts, but we do accept rum-backed securities. Meanwhile, the ship's medic shows up with a small wooden box. Inside, tiny flasks, each labeled with initials. Rum allowance, but microdosed, she says. Avoids over-celebration. Promotes gentle contentment. You're handed a small ledger to sign. It's called Proof of Intoxicated Compensation. As the night wanes down, music starts. Jenkins plays a ladle like a banjo. Someone sings a shanty about rum inflation. A seagull tries to barter for a teaspoon of grog. And you? You sip slowly, watching the stars. You realize that, in this bizarre system, every drop is earned. Every measure of rum tells a story, a mop wielded bravely, a joke well-timed, a storm weathered in laughter. It may not be legal tender, but it's earned. And sometimes that's more valuable than gold. You're summoned to the captain's quarters just after dawn. The room smells like lemon polish, candle wax, and nervous secrecy. Captain Merriweather leans over a map, dotted with little red X's, looking more like a hedge fund manager on casual. Friday, then a pirate. You've been doing well, he says, tapping the map. Which is why I'd like to teach you something. Subtle. You lean in. He unrolls a parchment titled Advanced Booty Timing, a practical guide to historical flexibility. Thatch slides in from behind a curtain, holding 2 ledgers and a biscuit. Time, he says solemnly, is merely a suggestion. You're about to ask for clarification when Jenkins bursts in holding a silver goblet. We just found this in the Spaniard wreckage. The captain waves him off. Perfect timing. Let's log it as a pre-existing asset. You blink. But we just found it. Exactly, the captain says, winking. But the ledger will say we found it 2 months ago, inside an old barrel. Labeled Legacy Chest. You watch in awe as they pull out the official ship's booty register. There's a column labeled Approximate Date of Plunder, give or take a fiscal quarter. Captain Merriweather explains, if we claim this loot on this quarter, we pay duty to port bureaucratia. But if it's from last quarter, when we were technically in international waters, Thatch finishes, no jurisdiction, pure profit. Jenkins chimes in. Also, I drew a little crab next to the date to make it more convincing. You nod. Of course, very bureaucratic. They continue explaining. Jewelry found during storm, logged as pre-owned from pirate estate sale. Unmarked silver, donated anonymously by a haunted schooner. Mysterious golden idol, found in Jenkins's sock drawer since April. Even emotional treasure is logged retroactively. Morale boost due to rumored victory 3 weeks ago, filed retroactively. Later, you're handed a scroll called Acceptable Backdating Euphemisms. Examples include rediscovered, long misplaced, inherited mid-raid, retrospectively gifted by fate. The kicker? Thatch explains they once backdated a cannon found floating at sea by claiming, it was always part of our decor, we just never fired it until now. You realize quickly, the trick isn't to lie, it's to narrate creatively. That evening, you help log a set of emeralds as rediscovered heirlooms from the expedition that never technically happened, but emotionally resonated. And under notes, you write, adjusted time of acquisition for maritime clarity. Also, Jenkins sneezed on it. As the sun dips below the horizon, you sit with your new favorite tool. A quill, a calendar, and a very flexible relationship with reality. The island doesn't appear on most maps. Or if it does, it's usually labeled something vague like, here be bureaucracy. As your ship nears the shore, you spot a wooden sign swinging lazily in the sea breeze. Welcome to Isla Declaracion. A tax amnesty paradise. Terms and conditions apply. Thatch leans over the rail and whispers, this is where pirates go, to make peace with the books. The docks are clean. Too clean. A bit unsettling, really. You half expect someone to sanitize your cutlass on arrival. At customs, you're met by a woman in polished boots and a linen vest with embroidered gold scales. Name? Technically Jenkins, but emotionally, me. She nods, unfazed. Declare all unfiled plunder, emotional or otherwise. You're handed a welcome packet, complete with amnesty forms in 4 languages and 1 in parrot squawk. Glyphs. A brochure titled Rehabilitating Your Tax Reputation, a Treasure Hunter's Guide. A complimentary mint. The crew disembarks cautiously, some shielding their eyes from the sheer respectability of the island. Others quietly hide loose gemstones in their shoes, unsure if those count as current year acquisitions. You're escorted to a sleek little building called the Reconciliation Pavilion. There, over spiced tea, you sit with a former smuggler-turned-tax compliance counselor named Diego. I once owed 7 chests in back plunder, he tells you proudly. Now I run workshops. You glance at the board behind him. Today's session: how to rebrand booty as cultural preservation. Later, you join a group seminar under a banyan tree, where pirates sit in a circle sharing tax regrets. One raspy voice says, "I claimed a mermaid's comb as a fishing expense." Another adds, "I wrote off my parrot as a talking compass." The counselor nods solemnly. "And how did that make you feel?" "Efficient," one mutters. In the afternoon, you walk through the island's famed ledger garden, a peaceful area where pirates symbolically bury fake ledgers and plant herbs above them. "To nurture honest earnings," the sign says. "Captain." Merriweather offers a gentle smile as he files your amnesty paperwork at a beachfront kiosk, staffed by an octogenarian named Mabel. She stamps everything with a flourish and a wink. "Your sins are forgiven," she says. "Unless they involved shell corporations. We don't forgive shell corporations." By sunset, the crew gathers at the island's only tavern, the Full Disclosure, where drinks are served in old mugs repurposed from misfiled tax documents. You sit back, watching Jenkins try to barter an amnesty extension for a sea shanty, and for the first time in a long while, you feel legally relaxed. There's something soothing about an island where numbers are balanced, amnesty is possible, and the only thing audited is your soul. The sky is painted in streaks of peach and indigo as the ship rocks gently in the harbor. The sea, for once, feels like it's exhaling. You sit beside Captain Merriweather at the rear table of the quarterdeck, a weathered ledger opened wide before you. Every column, every margin bears the marks of weeks spent chasing plunder, justifying expenses, filing via cannon, and, somehow, staying afloat. He dips a quill in ink, then pauses. "End of quarter. Let's close it out, shall we?" You nod. Together you scan the rows. Wages, liquid form, 14 barrels of rum, 3 mysteriously vanished. Ship maintenance, 1 replacement rope, 5 re-knotted ones. Loot reported, most of it. Loot not reported. Let's just say Jenkins got creative with aliases. He chuckles softly. Remember the ghost treasure line item? You do. It now reads, "Alleged, pending spectral confirmation." He scribbles down the final net total. You don't even look at the number. It hardly matters anymore. What matters is that you remember the absurd negotiations over biscuit-related injuries, the therapy sessions conducted with rum and sea shanties, the amnesty island, where pirates tried to outdo each other with remorse. You glance at the last empty line in the ledger. The captain hands you the quill. You close it. You write slowly. Final balance, incomplete but sufficient. Audit risk, acceptable. Morale, immeasurable. The ink dries as the stars begin to blink awake. You hear Jenkins laughing with Thatch in the distance. Someone is softly humming the ship's favorite lullaby. The sail creaks gently overhead like a curtain being drawn shut on a very odd, very specific stage play. And as you lean back, eyes half closed, breeze wrapping around your shoulders like a blanket, you know, there are no perfect ledgers. Only ones with good stories between the lines. The sea has gone still now, like a giant has laid a hand upon its surface and told it to hush. The stars shimmer faintly above, their reflections scattered across the dark velvet water in pinpricks of sleepy gold. Somewhere below deck, Jenkins snores gently, his dreams no doubt involving talking parrots and suspicious receipts. The wind drifts through the rigging like a lullaby. The ship, tired from its adventures, sways as if it too is preparing to doze off. Your eyes trace the constellations. One looks like a sword, another like a coin purse, another like a half-empty barrel of rum if you squint. You take one last look at the ledger. Every scratch of ink, every smudge and doodle tells a story. It may never pass a royal audit, but it doesn't need to. It's a journal of chaos, camaraderie, compromise. You breathe deeply, letting the salt air fill your chest. Somewhere a soft bell rings, maybe a lighthouse, maybe a reminder, or maybe just the world whispering, "That's enough for today." You curl up beneath a canvas blanket. The night hums around you, a lullaby in waves and wind and memories. Nothing left to file, nothing left to prove. Just this moment, you're safe, you're home, you're enough. End of script. Sweet dreams.